Okay, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for being here today. Fantastic.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Thank you for doing this. It's such a critically important issue.
Yeah, I was just listening to that last panel. Extraordinary, so informative, inspiring, and engaging. But I have to say that, reading about you, I mean, it's just the most astonishing journey that you've had, the work that you've done, the difference that you're making, the people that you're advising, and the people that, you're informing, inspiring and engaging every day. It's just absolutely incredible, Brittany. Congratulations on the hard work that you've been doing.
Thank you. It's a privilege.
Yeah, it must be. It really must be. So the first thing I'd like to ask you is, as I just said, it's extraordinary, genuinely reading about the remarkable things that you've done. Could you tell us about that journey, some of the milestones, that, created the values and the purpose that you hold so dear?
I mean, my career has taken a lot of directions that I didn't necessarily expect, but I know that my parents raised somebody to value integrity, to recognize that what is happening in the world is bigger than just me, and to recognize that, especially as people of faith, justice is our most closely held value. And not just justice in heaven, not just peace in heaven, but peace and justice here on earth. So I was raised by a pastor and an educator who really helped me understand the legacy that African American people have left around the world, that people of the African diaspora have left around the world in the name of justice to create a more free and just world for everybody. So I myself have a background in teaching and working in education policy, but I also found myself protesting throughout high school and college, and certainly during the Ferguson uprising when Michael Brown Jr. was killed by police in Ferguson, Missouri, not far from my hometown. And so I found myself alongside thousands of others spilled into the streets, facing tear gas and pepper spray, because we understand that militarism, that police violence, that these are extensions of white supremacy that continue to rear their ugly head and snatch the lives and the souls, the dreams and the futures of people all across the world, including right where we were in Ferguson. And so I sat on the Ferguson Commission as appointed by the governor. I worked with President Obama on policing issues, on his task force around this. But the most important work that I've ever done has been in community with people from all over the globe, trying to solve these challenging issues and being willing to risk it all to make the world pay attention. And so that's certainly why I'm here talking to you. And I recognize that any work that we're doing is to make something come true that Dr. Cornel West talks about, where he says justice is what love looks like in public. So we're really working toward a day where that love is publicly felt through policy, through rules, through regulations, and of course, how we treat one another.
Yeah, amazing, Brittany. And on that point then, in terms of, justice and love, I mean, are we in the final phases of eliminating racial discrimination, or is there just a very, very long way to go? And indeed, if we can eliminate racial discrimination, is it something that you think you'll see in your lifetime?
I don't know if it's something that I'll see in my lifetime, but that doesn't make it any less worthy a cause for me to work on, right? It is all of our job to put our hand on the plow, to till the soil as much as possible so that the next generation and the next generation, when they come along, they not only have an easier go, but they can go further than we have. And so I don't know if it's something that we'll see solved in my lifetime. What I do know is that we can bring about a radically different world if we put our minds to it and if we're deliberate about what that looks like. So I believe that we can dramatically reduce the number of people who are incarcerated in my country and across the world. I do believe that we can radically and dramatically reduce the number of people who are killed by police, by military, and by racial vigilantes. I truly do believe that we can close the gaps of racial discrimination in everything from healthcare to housing to employment and wages. I believe that we can shrink wealth gaps that exist not only in America, but across the globe between the global South and the West. I believe that those are things that I absolutely can see in my lifetime. And, you asked if we're in the final stages. I think we can only know that when we get to the end and we can look back and really look at the timeline. But what I do know is that the culture and the systems of white supremacy recognize just how tough an opposition it has in the rest of us, because it is gasping for air, right? These kind of desperate attempts to make racism and xenophobia fashionable again. These desperate attempts to harass and threaten and discriminate against people in ways that are ever more violent. This to me is evidence that we're on the right track, that we are making progress, and that white supremacy is trying with its very last breath to hold on to its power. But I believe that we are more powerful.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. I mean, it's important that people feel inspired, isn't it, and empowered. When thinking about the elimination of racial discrimination. Have you seen any examples that show us that the breakthrough is possible? What have you seen that's genuinely inspired you, where you think, wow, change is happening and change is possible?
I mean, there are so many examples. Some of them for me are historic. I think about my own ancestors who I've been able to gain more knowledge about. I think about my four-time great grandmother, Joanna, who was born enslaved in America but died free. She lived to be at least 98 years old, and she had 24 children. And what we find in the 1900 census in America is that she has kept together three generations of her family, herself, her children, and her grandchildren, from being sold off and separated, because on that census, they're living in two houses right next door to each other. So I think about all that she had to do with far less than I have at my disposal right now, and she inspires me. I think about Harriet Tubman and Ida B. Wells and Fannie Lou Hamer, people who in America, Black women who were critical to the work of freedom and abolition in this country. Because if they could keep going, then most certainly I can keep going with all of these privileges and accoutrements and comforts and technology, right? But in the modern day, I'm thinking about the people across the globe who made George Floyd and Breonna Taylor's names ring out loud. The fact that the entire world stopped to march, to protest, to call their names out, to tell their stories, to make sure that they are not being forgotten. The globe has never seen a multiracial movement quite like that one. So that continues to inspire me. The work that people across the globe are doing to end climate injustice, because that is deeply attached to racial injustice, that is deeply inspiring to me. I never worry about where my well of inspiration is going to come from, because I'm so grateful to be in community with people across the globe who are making it happen every single day. And if you're ever looking for some inspiration, get online, find a film, find somebody to follow who's doing this work every day and who can remind you that you can do the same.
Okay. Wow. Well, actually, since you talked about narrative and filmmaking, you're a writer yourself. I mean, you've got to tell us about the book. We Are Like Those Who Dream. Black Women Speak. Tell us about that book, please.
Thank you so much for asking. I'm in the final edits of it right now. But during the Ferguson uprising in 2014 and 2015, I went online and I just asked people to give me their favorite speeches from Black women throughout history. I had some of my own, but people helped me discover some that I had never read or that I hadn't read in a number of years, and reintroduce me to some voices that give me the kind of inspiration and wisdom that I've needed to persist in this work that I'm doing. I really found those speeches to almost be like a Bible of sorts, that when I needed to open it up, when times got hard, or I needed the words to speak, or I needed to think more critically about how we move forward, those words, those speeches, that oration was right there. So speeches from people like Lorraine Hansberry, who was an American playwright, who talked about making sure that the creature comforts of her life didn't stop her from being her most radical self. People like Maria W. Stewart, who was one of the first African American women to actually leave records of her speeching, kind of going out and really pleading with people to see the value and humanity in Black children. People like Michelle Obama, people like Yara Shahidi, people like Oprah Winfrey, talking about the importance of community and sisterhood. And so I've collected some of those speeches, I've written some personal essays, and we put them all together to be this book, We Are Like Those Who Dream, Black Women Speak, so that hopefully I can share those words of wisdom with others, and that when they are looking for inspiration, guidance, and wisdom, that they can seek that book as well.
Okay. I mean, I really want, I mean, I should ask you about education. I tell you what, I want to ask you a couple more questions that I haven't got written down. All right. So, but first, what I'll do is I just want to ask you about education and politics, right? I mean, are the systems doing enough?
I mean, you're talking to someone who is, I live in Washington, D.C., so I sit in the hotbed of politics, but you're talking to someone who lives in a country where books are being banned, where gender studies and racial studies and true, authentic history is being denied in classrooms from children who need it, both children of color, but also white children who need to know this truth and who need to understand what it looks like, not just to be an ally, but a co-conspirator in anti-racism work. So my short answer is no, we're not doing enough. As a former teacher, I understand that the first line of the revolution is in the classroom, because understanding not just what has happened throughout history, but how each and every one of us can have the power to change the future, that happens in the classroom. You gain the confidence, you gain the competencies, you gain the skill, you gain the understanding to go and be that kind of person in your neighborhood, your city, your community, your state, your country, across the globe. You learn those skills in the classroom. You gain that confidence in the classroom. And so I think it's time for us to be thinking about how we are, I like to say, creatively subversive. There's a really short story that I like to tell people about my hometown in Missouri. During the times of enslavement, there was a Black pastor named John Barry Meacham who started to teach Black children how to read and write in the basement of his church. There were some white clergy who joined along with him. And because this was so successful, the state legislature of the state of Missouri decided to make it illegal to teach Black children, whether they were free or enslaved, how to read or write. And so what did John Barry Meacham do? He got some wood and some nails and some hammers, and he built a steamboat. And he put that steamboat on the Mississippi River, which technically was free territory because it sat in between the slave state of Missouri and the free state of Illinois. And so he put those same children that were learning in that church basement onto that steamboat to make sure that the learning could continue. That's the kind of spirit of creative subversion that we need to employ. Bring those young people into your home, to your Sunday schools, to your synagogues, to your libraries, to the park in your neighborhood, and make sure that they're reading those banned books and talking about them. Make sure they're getting those lessons from history that those on the right would like to deny and to erase. And make sure that they're gaining the kind of knowledge and confidence that helps them tap into their power to change the future.
Wow. Guys, so incredible listening to you. I mean, what amazing stories. How incredible that he did that on that steamboat. That's Truly. Just a beautiful story. Wow. Well, look, we got 3 minutes and 51 seconds, right? It's all to the second. We've been running all day and there's so much more to come. But Brittany, I've got to ask you. You talked about young people or people just, looking out for a book or to read or something. Tell me a film and a book that have been real inspiration for you on your journey.
Oh my gosh, there are so many.
You can only do one.
There's a fantastic book by a friend of mine named Derica Purnell. And she talks about the case for abolition. She really talks about her own journey in becoming an abolitionist, to being someone who believes that we can live in a world without police or prisons. And that book is absolutely essential. I think it's been essential to my learning in the last year. And I think that those kind of books that are speaking to this current moment are really powerful. Gosh, as far as the film, I'm thinking about, there's a documentary actually that I was a part of on Netflix called Amend, and it is all about the shifting of America, the importance of protest, but also how we speak to the citizenship and humanity of everyday people in democratic society. So those are the two I'd recommend.
Great. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for that. Well, look, I mean, if people, we've got a couple of minutes left. So if people would like to find out more about your work, could you just let us know your social media? Tell us your website. How do people, support you?
Absolutely. I'm at BrittanyPacknett.com. My podcast, Undistracted, you can find that there. And any of my musings, what I'm up to, the speeches that I'm giving, the things I'm reading or writing about, you can find me at Miss Packetti on all social media. That's MSPACKYETTI Fun fact, that is the nickname that my third grade students gave me. And so it stuck with me all this time. But I'm on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. You can find me there at Miss Packnett.
Well, I'm sure that people who are watching will most definitely do that. Before we go, could you, to a young person watching, who really wants to be on the journey of eliminating racial discrimination, they want to live in a more just, equal, diverse and inclusive world, in a few seconds, what's the bit of support that you'd offer them?
The best piece of advice I can give you is to remember that no one who ever changed the world fit in. I don't care if you're talking about Nelson Mandela or Steve Jobs. Those were people who were willing, able, and ready to be themselves against all odds. Don't waste all of your time trying to fit in with the crowd. Be your unique self and do those things that you were uniquely born to do.
Well, Brittany, you are absolutely incredible. I feel truly honoured to have been able to speak to you. And when we look back in the future, people will say your name as a source of inspiration from them as we try to eliminate racial discrimination. Brittany, good luck on your journey and thank you so much today.
Thank you.